They said I destroyed her career in one careless moment. Standing in that glass-walled lobby with security cameras fixed on my face and her voice cutting through the crowd like a blade, I knew exactly what this looked like. A maintenance guy, a single father barely holding it together, and her, young, polished, untouchable, pointing at the shattered system panel behind me like I'd just blown up her entire world. Everyone stared. Some pulled out phones, and all I could think was, my daughter's tuition is due next week, and I just became the easiest person to blame. If you want to see how a man with nothing left to lose fights back against a system designed to crush him, stay until the end. Hit like and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in the basement maintenance room buzzed like insects trapped in a jar. Evan Ryder sat on an overturned bucket, elbows on his knees, staring at the work order crumpled in his oil-stained hands. Third shift. Again. He'd lost count of how many times he'd pulled doubles this month, but his bank account remembered everyone. "Dad, are you coming home tonight?" His daughter's voice still echoed in his head from the phone call an hour ago. Maya. 9 years old. Too smart for her own good. She'd ask the question the way kids do when they already know the answer but hope they're wrong. "I'll be there for breakfast," he'd told her, though Mrs. Chen from 4B had already agreed to get her on the school bus. Again, Evan stood, joints stiff, and grabbed his tool belt from the hook. 32 years old, and his body already complained like a man twice that age. He checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. The building would be nearly empty now, just security, a few late-working executives on the upper floors, and him. The elevator ride to the 18th floor was silent except for the mechanical whir of cables. Evan watched the numbers climb, floor by floor, each one representing a world he'd never belonged to. Consultants, lawyers, people who wore ties that cost more than his monthly rent. The doors opened with a soft chime. The 18th floor was all glass and steel, designed to look expensive and feel cold. Evan had been working in this building for 3 years and still felt like an intruder every time he stepped onto the executive levels. His boots, scuffed, practical, made soft squeaking sounds against the polished marble. He found the electrical panel tucked behind a decorative column near the northeast corner. Someone had reported flickering lights in the main conference room. Probably nothing. Probably a loose connection or a dying ballast. The kind of thing that took 10 minutes to fix but somehow required a full work order and 2 signatures. Evan popped open the panel and immediately frowned. The wiring inside looked like someone had let a child play with spaghetti. Whoever had installed this system had cut corners, probably during the building's renovation 5 years ago. Evan recognized the signs. Cheap contractors, rushed timelines, inspectors who looked the other way for the right price. He pulled out his voltage tester and got to work. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that 17 floors above him, a young woman named Lena Cross was pacing in front of a boardroom, rehearsing a presentation that could make or break her career. "The system integration is complete," she muttered to herself, clicking through slides on her tablet. "We've stress-tested every scenario. The launch event next week will demonstrate our platform's full capabilities to potential investors," and her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. "Electrical issue on 18. Maintenance handling it." Lena barely glanced at the message. Electrical issues were someone else's problem. She had 5 days to make sure everything was perfect for the biggest corporate event her company had ever hosted. 5 days to prove to the senior partners that promoting her, a 23-year-old woman in a firm full of men twice her age, hadn't been a diversity hire mistake. She went back to her presentation. Meanwhile, Evan was elbow-deep in the panel, tracing a circuit that shouldn't have been active. His frown deepened. This wasn't just sloppy work. This was dangerous. The system was running hot, pulling more current than the breakers were rated for. If he didn't... The lights flickered, then died. For 3 seconds, the 18th floor was swallowed by darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in a sickly green glow. Evan's heart hammered in his chest. He yanked his hands out of the panel and stepped back, breathing hard. "What the hell?" The lights came back on, but something was wrong. Half the floor was lit, half wasn't. And somewhere in the walls, something was making a sound like grinding metal. Evan grabbed his radio. "Control, this is Ryder. We've got a problem on 18. I need..." The radio crackled. "Stand by." He didn't wait. He moved quickly down the hallway, following the sound, his tool belt jangling with each step. The noise was coming from the main server room, a sealed, climate-controlled space that housed the building's entire network infrastructure. The door was ajar. That was wrong. That door was never supposed to be open. Keycard access only. Evan pushed it open. Inside, the server racks were dark. Not sleeping, not in standby mode. Dead. And the smell, burnt electronics and ozone hit him like a physical force. Jesus Christ! He moved between the racks, checking connections, looking for the source of the failure. And then he saw it. One of the primary power distribution units had blown. Not a small failure, a catastrophic one. Scorch marks spread across the metal casing like black fingers, and the floor beneath it was littered with melted plastic and warped components. This wasn't wear and tear. This was sabotage, or gross negligence, or both. Evan's mind raced. He needed to report this. He needed to get someone from building management down here immediately. He needed to... What did you do? The voice came from behind him, sharp and cold. Evan turned. A young woman stood in the doorway. Early 20s, maybe. Dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Dressed like she'd just stepped out of a magazine. Blazer, fitted pants, heels that probably cost more than Evan's entire wardrobe. Her eyes were wide, locked on the destroyed PDU, then on Evan. I didn't... Evan started. What did you do? She repeated, louder this time. Her voice shook, not with fear, but with fury. I didn't do anything, Evan said, keeping his voice steady. I was checking a panel down the hall. The system failed, and You were in here when it happened. It wasn't a question. I just got here. The door was already... Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed? She stepped into the room, her heels clicking against the floor like a countdown. Do you have any concept of what this system controls? Evan's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I'm a maintenance technician. I didn't cause this. I found it like this. Found it? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You found it. How convenient. I'm telling you, this system manages the entire building's infrastructure. HVAC, security, fire suppression, everything. She was breathing hard now, her composure cracking. And in 5 days, we're hosting an event with 200 investors, and you just... I didn't touch this, Evan said, his voice harder now. Look at the scorch marks. Look at the casing. This didn't just fail. This was waiting to fail. Whoever installed this cut corners, and it finally caught up. Lena stared at him like he had just spoken a foreign language. You're blaming the installation? I'm stating a fact. You're covering your ass. Evan took a breath. Who are you? Lena Cross, project lead for the integration that you just destroyed. Of course she was. Ms. Cross, Evan said slowly, I didn't destroy anything. But if you want to fix this, you need to listen to me. This PDU didn't just blow because someone flipped a switch. There's a systemic problem in this building's electrical infrastructure. I've been reporting it for months, and nobody listens. Months, Lena repeated flatly. Check the maintenance logs. I don't need to check anything. I need you out of this room, now. Evan stared at her. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was assuming this building's maintenance staff was competent. The words hit like a slap. Evan's hands curled into fists at his sides, but he kept his voice level. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that in 5 days I have to stand in front of the most important people in this industry and demonstrate a system that you just destroyed. I didn't touch it. Then why are you here? Because I'm doing my job. Your job is to keep the lights on. You couldn't even do that. Evan felt something crack inside him. Not anger, but something colder, something tired. Fine, he said quietly. Believe what you want. But when this building has another failure, and it will, don't say nobody warned you. He turned to leave. Where do you think you're going? Evan stopped. To file my report. You're not filing anything until security reviews the footage. He turned back. Excuse me? You were the only person in this room when the system failed. That makes you a liability. A liability? A suspect. Evan's laugh was short and humorless. You think I sabotaged your system? I think you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now I have to explain to my bosses why their entire network is down. So you're going to blame the maintenance guy. I'm going to let the facts speak for themselves. The facts, Evan repeated. Right. Lena pulled out her phone and made a call. Security? This is Lena Cross. I need someone on 18 immediately. We have a situation. Evan stood there watching her and felt the weight of every bad decision he'd never made pressing down on him anyway. This was how it worked. People like him, people who fixed things, who showed up, who did the work nobody else wanted to do, were invisible until something went wrong. Then they became convenient. 2 security guards arrived within minutes. They were polite but firm, asking Evan to step into the hallway while they sorted things out. He complied. He always complied. What choice did he have? Lena stood with her arms crossed, watching him like he might bolt. Ms. Cross, one of the guards said gently, we'll need to pull the footage and get statements, but for now, I want him placed on administrative leave, Lena said. The guard blinked. That's not our call, ma'am. You'd need to go through building management. Then get them on the phone, Evan spoke up. You're really doing this. Lena's eyes locked on his. I'm protecting my project. You're protecting yourself. Her jaw tightened. I don't know you. I don't know what happened here. All I know is that I have 5 days to salvage a disaster, and I can't afford to take chances. Evan nodded slowly. Yeah, I get it. He did. He'd been getting it his whole life. The security guards escorted him to the lobby, where he sat on a bench and waited for someone from management to show up and decide his fate. The building was quiet now, the kind of quiet that only exists in the dead hours between midnight and dawn. Evan checked his phone. A text from Mrs. Chen. Maya's asleep. Don't worry. He typed back a thank you and pocketed the phone. Across the lobby, through the glass doors, he could see the city. Lights, movement, life going on without him. He thought about Maya, about the rent that was due in 2 weeks, about the envelope in his apartment that held exactly $127 and a prayer. He thought about Lena Cross and the way she'd looked at him, like he was a problem to be solved, not a person to be heard. And he thought about the burnt-out PDU and the sloppy wiring and the way this whole thing stank of something bigger than a blown fuse. Somewhere above him, 17 floors up, Lena Cross stood in the ruined server room and tried not to scream. Her phone buzzed. Her boss. She answered. Mr. Harrington. Lena, I just got a call from security. What the hell happened? She closed her eyes. We had a catastrophic power failure. The main PDU is destroyed. The backup systems didn't engage. We've lost the entire integrated network. Silence. Then, how long to fix it? I don't know yet. I'm waiting on diagnostics. You have 5 days. I know. Lena. His voice was low, dangerous. Do you understand what's at stake here? This event isn't just a product demo. This is 200 investors who are deciding whether to fund our expansion. If we don't deliver, I understand. Then make it happen. The line went dead. Lena stood there, staring at the charred metal, and felt the full weight of her 23 years pressing down on her. She'd fought so hard to get here. Graduated top of her class. Worked twice as hard as everyone else. Proved herself in meetings where men twice her age dismissed her ideas until someone else repeated them. And now this. She pulled out her tablet and started making a list. First, find out exactly what failed. Second, get replacement parts ordered. Third, identify who was responsible. Her pen hovered over the third item, Evan Ryder. She didn't know anything about him except that he'd been in the room when everything went wrong. That had to mean something, didn't it? Her phone buzzed again, another text from her assistant. Building management says maintenance tech Evan Ryder has a clean record. No incidents, 3 years on staff. Lena stared at the message. Clean record. She typed back, pull his personnel file. I want to know everything. Then she set her jaw and went back to work. Because that's what she did. She solved problems. And right now, Evan Ryder was a problem. 3 hours later, Evan was released with a warning and a suspension pending investigation. He walked out of the building into the pre-dawn darkness and caught the first bus home. Maya was still asleep when he got there. He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching the rise and fall of her breathing, and felt something twist in his chest. He'd promised her things would get better. He'd promised her mother, too, before she died. And now he was suspended, probably about to be fired, possibly blacklisted from every maintenance job in the city, all because he'd been in the wrong place at the wrong time. He went to the kitchen and made coffee he didn't want. Outside, the city started to wake up. And somewhere across town, Lena Cross sat in her office, staring at Evan Ryder's personnel file, and tried to ignore the small voice in her head that whispered, "What if you're wrong?" She pushed it away. She couldn't afford to be wrong. Not now. Not ever. Evan sat at his kitchen table, the coffee growing cold in front of him. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old pipes. He'd lived in this place for 4 years, since 6 months after Sarah died, and he still hadn't bothered to hang anything on the walls. What was the point? He pulled out his phone and opened his bank app. The numbers stared back at him like an accusation. $1,847.32 rent was $1,200, due in 12 days. Maya's school supply fee was $85, due yesterday. Groceries, utilities, the payment plan for Sarah's medical bills that would follow him for another 3 years. He closed the app. His phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor. Evan. Heard what happened. Sorry, man. HR will be in touch. Keep your head up. Keep your head up. Right. Because that's what people said when they couldn't actually help you. Evan set the phone down and rubbed his eyes. He'd been awake for 22 hours straight, and his body was screaming for sleep, but his mind wouldn't shut off. He kept seeing Lena Cross's face, the way she'd looked at him, the certainty in her voice when she'd called him a liability, a suspect. He'd dealt with people like her before. People who'd never had to fight for anything, who'd never had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying their kid new shoes. People who thought the world was supposed to make sense, that hard work guaranteed results, that if something went wrong, it was because someone screwed up. And he was always the someone. The sun was starting to rise when Maya shuffled into the kitchen, dragging her blanket behind her. Dad? Evan straightened, pushing the exhaustion off his face. Hey, sweetheart, you're up early. You're home? She climbed into the chair next to him, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. Her hair was a mess, sticking up in every direction. She had Sarah's eyes, dark brown, too observant for her age. Told you I'd be here for breakfast, Evan said. You look tired. I'm okay. Maya studied him with that look, the one that said she knew he was lying but was choosing to let it slide. 9 years old and already she'd learned to read the gaps between his words. Are we having pancakes? She asked. Evan glanced at the clock. 6:15 a.m. He had just enough time before Mrs. Chen came to walk her to the bus stop. Yeah, he said, we're having pancakes. He stood and pulled out the mix, the eggs, the milk. His hands moved through the familiar routine while Maya sat at the table and told him about a book she was reading for school. Something about a girl who discovered she had magic powers but had to keep them secret. She can't tell anyone, Maya said, because if people find out, they'll take her away from her family. Evan flipped a pancake. Sounds scary. Yeah, but she's brave. Good. Dad? Yeah? Are you in trouble at work? Evan's hand stilled on the spatula. What makes you think that? You always come home early when something bad happens. He turned to look at her. She was watching him with those eyes again, too smart, too aware. It's nothing, he said, just a misunderstanding. Did you do something wrong? No. Then why are you home? Evan set the spatula down and sat across from her. Sometimes people get blamed for things that aren't their fault. It happens, but it'll get sorted out. When? I don't know, Maya frowned. That's not fair. No, Evan agreed. It's not. She reached across the table and grabbed his hand. Her fingers were small, sticky with syrup residue from yesterday. It'll be okay, Dad. Evan squeezed her hand gently. Yeah, it will. He wished he believed it. Across the city, Lena Cross stood in the ruined server room with 2 technicians and a facilities manager who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. How bad is it? She asked. The older technician, a guy named Marcus, who'd been working in the building longer than Lena had been alive, wiped his hands on a rag and shook his head. Bad. The PDU is completely fried. We'll need to replace the whole unit plus half the cabling that got damaged in the surge. How long? If we can get the parts today, 3 days, maybe 4. I need it in 2. Marcus laughed. Ms. Cross, with all due respect, I could have a team working around the clock and we still wouldn't then get a bigger team. It's not about manpower. It's about, I don't care what it's about. Lena's voice was ice. I care about results. This event happens in 5 days. The system needs to be operational in 2, so we have time to test it. Make it happen. Marcus exchanged a glance with the other technician, then shrugged. I'll see what I can do. Don't see? Do. The facilities manager cleared his throat. Ms. Cross, about the maintenance worker, what about him? His record's clean, 3 years, no incidents, and I pulled the logs like you asked. He's been filing reports about electrical issues in this building for 8 months. Lena turned. What kind of reports? Overloaded circuits, faulty wiring, code violations that got missed during the renovation. The manager pulled out a tablet and scrolled through a list. He flagged the 18th floor specifically, said the PDU installation looked substandard, recommended a full inspection. When? 4 months ago. Lena's stomach dropped. And? And nothing. Building ownership said they'd look into it, never did. She stared at him. You're telling me this failure was predictable. I'm telling you Ryder tried to warn us. Then why didn't anyone listen? The manager shifted uncomfortably. You'd have to ask ownership. Lena's mind was racing. If Evan Ryder had been reporting problems for months, if he'd specifically flagged this equipment, then no. She couldn't think like that. She'd made the call. She'd told security to investigate him. She'd put his job on the line. If she was wrong, Ms. Cross? She blinked. What? Do you want us to continue with the suspension, or I'll handle it, she said quickly. Just focus on getting the system back online. The manager nodded and left. Lena stood there, staring at the burnt metal, and felt the foundation of her certainty start to crack. Talk. Evan dropped Maya at the bus stop, watched her climb aboard, and stood on the corner until the bus disappeared around the corner. Then he walked home through streets that were starting to fill with morning traffic. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him hit the green button. Hello? Mr. Ryder? This is Patricia Voss from Human Resources. Evan's chest tightened. Yeah. I'm calling about the incident last night. We've completed a preliminary review, and we'd like you to come in for a meeting this afternoon at 2. A meeting to discuss your employment status. Am I being fired? A pause. That will be determined during the meeting. Right. Can you be here at 2? Evan thought about saying no, thought about telling them to go to hell, thought about a lot of things. I'll be there, he said. The line went dead. Evan stood on the sidewalk, people rushing past him, and felt the city press in from all sides. Cool! By noon, Lena had called in every favor she had. She sat in her office, a small glass box on the 35th floor, with her phone on speaker, listening to a parts supplier explain why they couldn't deliver a replacement PDU any faster than 5 days. That's not good enough, Lena said. I understand, Ms. Cross, but these units aren't sitting on a shelf somewhere. They're custom-built to spec. 5 days is actually impressive given, find me someone who can do it faster. There isn't anyone. Lena ended the call and immediately dialed another number. This was what she did. When the world said no, she found a different question. Her assistant poked her head in. Your 2 o'clock is here. I don't have a 2 o'clock. Building management. They said it's about the maintenance worker. Lena's jaw tightened. Send them in. A woman in her 50s walked in, dressed in a practical suit carrying a folder. Miss Cross, I'm Patricia Voss, HR. I remember. Patricia sat down without being invited. We need to talk about Evan Ryder. What about him? We've reviewed the security footage from last night. Lena went very still. And? He's telling the truth. He arrived at the electrical panel at 11:52 p.m. The system failure occurred at 12:03 a.m. He entered the server room at 12:04 after the damage was already done. The words landed like stones. So he didn't cause it, Lena said slowly. Correct. And the reports he filed were legitimate. We've confirmed that the building's electrical system has been operating outside code compliance for months. Ryder flagged it repeatedly. Ownership ignored him. Lena felt something cold settle in her stomach. I accused him of sabotage. You did. I suspended him. You recommended it. I executed it. Same thing. Patricia folded her hands. Ms. Cross, I'm not here to judge your decisions. I'm here to inform you that we're reinstating Ryder effective immediately. Good. That's good. However, Patricia's voice hardened. He's considering filing a formal complaint, wrongful accusation, defamation, possibly legal action. Lena's head snapped up. Legal action? You publicly accused him of destroying company property in front of witnesses. If he can prove it damaged his reputation or affected his employment prospects, he has grounds. I was trying to protect the project. You were trying to protect yourself. The words hung in the air. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to defend herself, but Patricia was right. She'd been scared, panicked, and she'd thrown Evan Ryder under the bus because it was easier than admitting she didn't have control. What do you need from me? Lena asked quietly. An apology would be a start. I can do that. In person. Lena nodded. When? He's coming in at 2 for what he thinks is a termination meeting. I suggest you be there. Evan arrived at the building at 1:55 p.m. He'd showered, shaved, put on his cleanest shirt. Not because he thought it would make a difference, but because Sarah had always told him to show up looking like he gave a damn, even when he didn't. The HR office was on the 3rd floor. Evan took the stairs because the elevator felt too slow, too confined. Patricia Voss met him in the lobby. Mr. Ryder, thank you for coming. Didn't think I had a choice. You always have a choice. She gestured to a conference room. This way. Evan followed her, his tool belt conspicuously absent. He felt naked without it. The conference room was small, sterile. A table, 4 chairs, a window overlooking the city, and Lena Cross, sitting in one of the chairs, looking like she hadn't slept. Evan stopped in the doorway. Ms. Cross wanted to be here, Patricia said. Please, sit. Evan didn't move. Is this the part where you fire me in front of the person who got me fired? Nobody's firing you, Patricia said. Evan's eyes cut to Lena. That right? Lena stood. Mr. Ryder, I owe you an apology. An apology. I reviewed the security footage. I spoke to building management. You were telling the truth. You didn't cause the failure. You tried to prevent it. Evan crossed his arms. Took you 12 hours to figure that out. I was wrong. Yeah, you were. Lena flinched but didn't look away. I was scared. My career was on the line. The event, everything I've worked for, was falling apart, and I needed someone to blame. So you picked the maintenance guy. Yes, because that's easy. Yes. Evan laughed, short and bitter. At least you're honest about it. I'm trying to make this right. You can't. Evan's voice was flat. You suspended me. You accused me of sabotage in front of witnesses. You think an apology fixes that? I know it doesn't. Then what do you want from me? Lena took a breath. I want your help. Evan stared at her. You're kidding. The system is still down. We have 5 days to get it operational. Marcus says it's impossible, but I don't believe in impossible. And you know this building systems better than anyone. So now I'm useful. You've always been useful. I just didn't see it. And I'm supposed to forget you tried to destroy my life because you need me? No, Lena said quietly. I'm asking you to help me anyway. Evan shook his head. Unbelievable. Patricia stepped in. Mr. Ryder, you're being reinstated with full back pay. Your record will reflect no disciplinary action, and if you choose to pursue legal action for wrongful accusation, the company won't contest it. Evan turned to her. Seriously? Seriously. He looked back at Lena. And if I say no to helping you? Then I'll figure it out on my own, Lena said. But it'll probably fail. And 200 investors will walk away, and a lot of people who had nothing to do with this will lose their jobs. Not my problem. No, Lena agreed. It's not. They stood there, the silence stretching between them. Evan thought about walking out, thought about going home, picking up Maya from school, and forgetting this place existed. But then he thought about the burnt PDU, the sloppy wiring, the corner cutting and the ignored warnings. And he thought about the fact that if that system failed again during the event, people could get hurt. "You need to listen to me this time," Evan said finally. Lena nodded. "I will. No arguments, no second guessing. If I say something's unsafe, we stop." "Agreed. And you pay me overtime." "Done." Evan sighed. I'm going to regret this." "Probably," Lena said. He almost smiled. Almost. "Fine. Let's go look at the damage." Patricia stood. "I'll leave you two to it." She left, closing the door behind her. Lena and Evan stood on opposite sides of the conference table, two people who'd started as enemies and now had to become something else, partners, whether they liked it or not. "For what it's worth," Lena said quietly, "I really am sorry." Evan met her eyes. "We'll see." And with that, they headed back to the 18th floor to begin the impossible task of fixing what had been broken. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the moment everything changed, not because of the apology, not because of the work ahead, but because for the first time they'd both chosen to see past the surface and acknowledge what was really there. A single father who'd been invisible for too long, and a young woman who'd been fighting so hard to prove herself that she'd forgotten what she was fighting for. The system wasn't the only thing that needed repair. They just didn't know it yet. The 18th floor looked worse in daylight. Evan stood in the server room with his arms crossed, surveying the damage while Lena hovered behind him with her tablet, taking notes like her life depended on it. Marcus and his team had cleared out most of the debris, but the scorch marks on the wall told the whole story. "It started here," Evan said, pointing to the destroyed PDU. "But the real problem is upstream. The circuit feeding this unit was pulling twice the rated load." Lena frowned. "How is that possible? The system passed inspection." "Inspections can be bought." She looked up sharply. "Are you saying someone was bribed?" "I'm saying I've worked in enough buildings to know how this goes. Developer wants to cut costs. Contractor cuts corners. Inspector signs off because nobody wants to delay the project. And 5 years later, everything falls apart. That's illegal." "Yeah, so's a lot of things." Lena's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she pulled up a schematic on her tablet. If the circuit was overloaded, why didn't the breakers trip? Because they're the wrong size. Evan walked to the electrical panel and opened it, revealing a mess of wires that looked like they'd been installed by someone in a hurry. "See this? 20-amp breaker on a 15-amp circuit. It'll let too much current through before it trips. Can we replace them? We'll have to, but that's just treating the symptom. The whole system needs to be reevaluated." Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. "What?" Evan asked. "My boss. He wants a status update in an hour." "Tell him the truth." "The truth is that we're nowhere close to ready." "Then that's what you tell him." Lena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You don't understand how this works. If I tell him we can't deliver, he'll replace me with someone who will. Even if they're lying, especially if they're lying." She set her tablet down and rubbed her temples. "This company doesn't reward honesty. It rewards results." Evan studied her. In the harsh LED light of the server room, she looked younger than 23, tired, scared, human. "How long have you been working here?" he asked. 18 months. "And before that?" "Grad school, top of my class, 3 job offers. I picked this one because they promised me real responsibility." She laughed again. "Turns out responsibility just means being first in line when things go wrong." Evan knew that feeling. "Look," he said, "I can't fix your company's culture, but I can fix the electrical system. It's going to take longer than 2 days, though, more like 4, maybe 5. We don't have 5 days." "Then you need to postpone the event." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because the investors are already booked. Flights, hotels, calendar holds. If we postpone now, half of them won't reschedule, and without their funding—" She stopped, pressing her lips together. "A lot of people are counting on this. So you're going to push forward with a broken system." "I'm going to push forward with a system that's good enough." Evan shook his head. "Good enough gets people killed." "Don't be dramatic. I'm being realistic. You want to host 200 people in a building with faulty electrical? You want to run demos on equipment that could fail at any moment? What happens when the fire suppression system goes down during your presentation, or the emergency exits lose power?" Lena went very still. That could happen? It already did happen, last night. You just got lucky nobody was here. She stared at him, and Evan watched the calculations run behind her eyes. The risk assessment, the cost-benefit analysis. All the things people like her did when they were trying to justify a bad decision. What if we focus on the critical systems, she said finally. Just get enough operational to run the event safely. We can fix the rest later. Define safely. Life support, fire suppression, emergency lighting, the network infrastructure for the demos. Evan considered it. It wasn't ideal. It wasn't even close to ideal, but it was better than nothing. I'll need full access, he said. No restrictions, no bureaucracy. If I say I need a part, I get it. If I say I need a contractor, you hire them. Done. And if I say something's not safe, we pull the plug. No arguments. Lena hesitated. What if we're out of time? Then you postpone. Evan, those are my terms. They locked eyes. Two stubborn people who'd both been backed into corners and were trying to find a way out that didn't involve surrender. Fine, Lena said, but I'm working with you. You don't need to do that. Yes, I do. This is my project, my responsibility. I'm not sitting in an office while you fix my mistakes. Evan almost argued, but something in her expression stopped him. Pride, maybe, or guilt, or just the same desperate need to feel useful that he recognized in himself. You know anything about electrical work? He asked. I can learn. It's not a classroom. I learn fast, Evan sighed. You'll do exactly what I tell you. No improvising, no shortcuts. Agreed. And if you get in the way, I'm sending you back upstairs. Fair. He turned back to the panel. Then let's get started. For the next 3 hours, they worked in tense silence. Evan walked Lena through the basics. How to read a circuit diagram, how to test voltage, how to identify which systems were critical and which could wait. She asked questions constantly, scribbling notes on her tablet, and to Evan's surprise, she actually listened to the answers. It was strange, working alongside her. Every time their hands brushed reaching for the same tool or their shoulders bumped in the cramped space behind the server racks, Evan felt the reminder of who she was, what she'd done to him. But he also saw the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the way she swore under her breath when she dropped a screwdriver, the way she didn't complain when her expensive blazer got covered in dust and grime. She wasn't what he'd expected. Around 4 p.m., Marcus showed up with a delivery. Got your replacement breakers, he said, dropping a box on the floor. Also, facilities wants to know if you need additional manpower. Yeah, Evan said. I need someone who knows HVAC controls. The climate system is tied into the same circuit as the servers. If we're going to isolate them, we need to reroute the ductwork. Marcus made a note. I'll send Jimmy up. He's good. Thanks. Marcus lingered. Ryder, can I talk to you for a second? Evan glanced at Lena, who was elbow-deep in a cable tray, then followed Marcus into the hallway. What's up? Marcus kept his voice low. Is she giving you trouble? No. Why? Because I heard what she did, accusing you like that. If I were you, I'd tell her to go to hell. Evan leaned against the wall. She apologized. Words are cheap. Yeah, they are. So why are you helping her? It was a good question. Evan had been asking himself the same thing since he'd agreed to this. Because someone needs to make sure this building doesn't burn down, he said finally. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not. But if I walk away and something happens, I'll know I could have stopped it. Marcus shook his head. You're a better man than me. No, I'm just tired of being angry. It was true. He'd spent the last 12 hours furious at Lena, at the building, at the whole broken system that chewed people like him up and spit them out. But anger was exhausting, and it didn't fix anything, so he'd made a choice. Do the work, protect people, let the rest sort itself out. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. I'll send Jimmy up. When Evan returned to the server room, Lena was staring at her tablet with an expression that looked like she'd just been punched. What? Evan asked. The parts supplier. They can't get us a replacement PDU until Monday. That's cutting it close. That's 3 days after the event. She looked up. We're going to have to run on backup systems. Backups aren't designed for sustained load. I know, but it's all we have. Evan thought about it. The backup power distribution units were smaller, less robust. They could handle the critical systems, but not much else. And if they failed during the event, we'll need to run continuous monitoring, he said. Real-time alerts if anything starts to overheat. Can you set that up? Yeah, but someone needs to be watching it during the event. If we get a warning, we'll have maybe 2 minutes to respond before the whole thing crashes. I'll watch it. You're supposed to be giving the presentation. I'll multitask. Evan raised an eyebrow. You're going to pitch to investors while monitoring electrical systems. You have a better idea? He didn't. Fine, Evan said. But we drill it. Practice runs. Failure scenarios. I want to know you can shut everything down safely if it comes to that. When? Every night until the event. Lena nodded. I'll clear my schedule. By 6 p.m., they'd replaced half the breakers and rerouted 3 critical circuits. Jimmy had arrived and was working on the HVAC controls, cursing at the rat's nest of wiring someone had left behind the air handler. Evan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Maya's asking when you'll be home. He checked the time. He'd promised Maya he'd be there for dinner. I need to go, he said to Lena. She looked up from where she was labeling cables. We're not done. I know, but I have to pick up my daughter. Something shifted in Lena's expression. You have a daughter? Yeah. How old? 9. Lena set down the label maker. I didn't know. Why would you? She didn't have an answer for that. Evan grabbed his jacket. I'll be back at 8. We can run the first drill then. I'll be here. He paused at the door. You should eat something. You look like hell. Thanks. I'm serious. You're no good to anyone if you pass out. Lena almost smiled. Is that your professional opinion? That's my human opinion. He left before she could respond. The bus ride home was crowded, filled with people heading back from jobs that paid them just enough to keep showing up. Evan stood near the back, holding the rail, and let his mind go blank. He was exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally, and they were only one day into this mess. When he got home, Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework. She looked up when he walked in, and her whole face lit up. Dad! Hey, kiddo. He dropped his bag and pulled her into a hug. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and pencil erasers. Are you staying home tonight? For a few hours? Then I have to go back. Her face fell. Again? Yeah, sorry. It's okay. But her voice said it wasn't. Evan knelt down so they were eye level. I know this isn't fair. I know you didn't sign up for a dad who's never around. But I'm working on something important, and when it's done, things will get better. You always say that. I know. And it never happens. The words hit harder than any accusation Lena had thrown at him. You're right, Evan said quietly. I do say that a lot, and I'm sorry. But Maya, I need you to trust me on this one. Just a few more days. She studied him with those 2 old eyes, then nodded. Okay. That's my girl. They ordered pizza and ate it while Maya told him about her day. There'd been a fight at recess. Her friend Emma had said something mean about Maya's shoes, hand-me-downs from a cousin, and Maya had told her to shut up, which had gotten her sent to the principal's office. Did you apologize? Evan asked. No, she should apologize to me. Maybe, but sometimes you have to be the bigger person. Why? Because holding on to anger just makes you tired. Maya frowned. Is that what you do? Evan thought about Lena, about the choice he'd made to help her despite everything. I'm trying to, he said. At 7:30, he kissed Maya goodnight, promised Mrs. Chen he'd be back before midnight, and headed back to the building. Lena was exactly where he'd left her, surrounded by cables and empty coffee cups. Did you eat? Evan asked. She held up a protein bar wrapper. Gourmet meal. That's not food. It has calories. Evan shook his head and set a paper bag on the table. I brought you something. Lena opened it. Inside was a sandwich from the deli near his apartment. Nothing fancy, just turkey and cheese on wheat. She stared at it like he'd handed her gold. You didn't have to do this, she said. I know. Thank you. Don't make it weird. She laughed, a real laugh this time, not the bitter sound from earlier. Too late. They worked until midnight, running through emergency shutdown procedures until Lena could execute them in her sleep. Evan pushed her hard, throwing scenario after scenario at her, and every time she stumbled, he made her start over. Again, he said when she missed a step in the sequence. I got it right the last 3 times. Then you'll get it right this time, too. She glared at him, but ran through it again, this time perfect. Better, Evan said. High praise from the hard ass. You want praise? Go talk to your boss. You want to not kill anyone? You listen to me. Lena's expression sobered. You really think it could be that bad? I think we're trying to run a marathon on a broken leg. It might hold, it might not. But if it doesn't, people could get hurt. So yeah, it could be that bad. She nodded slowly. Then we'd better make sure it holds. They worked in silence for another hour, fine-tuning the backup systems, double-checking every connection. At some point, Evan realized they'd fallen into a rhythm, Lena anticipating what tool he needed before he asked, Evan adjusting his explanations to match how she processed information. It was almost comfortable. Almost. At 1 a.m., Lena's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and winced. I have to take this. She stepped into the hallway. Evan couldn't hear the conversation, but he could see her through the glass, pacing, gesturing, her face tight with stress. When she came back, she looked like she'd aged 10 years. My boss, she said. He wants a full presentation rehearsal tomorrow at noon. Can you do that and still work on this? I don't have a choice. Evan wiped his hands on a rag. Then we'd better call it a night. You're no good to anyone running on empty, says the man who works double shifts. Yeah, and look how well that's working out for me. Lena smiled faintly. Fair point. They packed up in silence. As they waited for the elevator, Lena said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you really agree to help me? After what I did? Evan thought about it. About Maya. About Sarah. About all the times he'd been knocked down and had to choose whether to stay there or get back up. Because staying angry takes too much energy, he said, and I've got better things to spend it on. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Your daughter, Lena said. Evan nodded. My daughter. They rode down in silence. When they reached the lobby, Lena turned to him. For what it's worth, she said, she's lucky to have you. Evan didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and headed for the door. Outside, the city was quiet. A few cars. A few people stumbling home from bars. The kind of peace that only exists in the hours between midnight and dawn. Evan caught the last bus home and let his head rest against the window. 3 more days. He could do this. He had to. The next morning started at 6 a.m. with a phone call from Marcus. We've got a problem, he said. Evan, still half asleep, sat up. What kind of problem? The backup PDU. It's overheating. How bad? Bad enough that I shut it down. We're running on emergency power only, Evan swore. I'm on my way. He dressed in the dark, kissed Maya's sleeping forehead, and was out the door by 6:15. When he arrived at the building, Lena was already there, standing in the server room with Marcus, staring at the temperature readouts like they might change if she looked hard enough. Tell me this is fixable, she said when she saw Evan. Everything's fixable. Question is whether we have time. He dove into diagnostics, tracing the problem back to a cooling fan that had seized up during the night. The fan itself was a cheap part, $20 at any hardware store. But replacing it meant shutting down the entire backup system for at least 2 hours. We can't afford 2 hours, Lena said. We can't afford a fire either. She closed her eyes. Do it. Evan worked fast, pulling the damaged fan and jury rigging a temporary replacement from spare parts. It wasn't pretty, but it would hold until they could get a proper unit delivered. By 9 a.m., the system was back online. By 10, Lena was due upstairs for her rehearsal. Go, Evan said. I've got this. Are you sure? You're paying me to be sure. Now go sell your project. She hesitated, then grabbed her tablet and headed for the elevator. Evan watched her go and realized something. He didn't hate her anymore. Somewhere between the accusations and the apologies, between the late nights and the shared sandwiches, she'd stopped being the enemy and started being something else. A person. Flawed. Scared. Trying her best in a system designed to chew her up, just like him. He got back to work, and for the first time in a long time, the anger that had been sitting in his chest like a stone started to feel a little lighter. Lena's rehearsal went exactly as badly as she'd feared. She stood in the main conference room on the 35th floor, surrounded by senior partners who looked at her like she was a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. Her presentation was flawless. She'd practiced it 50 times. But every slide, every projection, every carefully crafted pitch point felt hollow when she knew the system holding it all together was one blown fan away from catastrophe. "Ms. Cross," said Richard Harrington, the managing partner, "you're telling us everything is on schedule." "Yes." "No delays? No technical issues?" Lena's throat went dry. She thought about the burnt PDU, the jury-rigged cooling system, Evan working 18-hour days to hold everything together with duct tape and determination. "We experienced a minor electrical issue," she said carefully. "It's been resolved." "How minor?" "A power distribution unit failed. We've implemented backup systems and are monitoring everything continuously." Harrington leaned back in his chair. "And you're confident these backup systems will hold during the event?" No, she wasn't confident at all, but that wasn't what he wanted to hear. "Yes," Lena said. "I'm confident." The lie tasted like copper on her tongue. Another partner spoke up, Gerald Moss, a man in his 60s who'd made it clear from day one that he thought Lena's promotion was a mistake. "What happens if the backups fail?" "They won't." "But if they do?" "We have emergency protocols in place, multiple redundancies, real-time monitoring." "That's not an answer." Lena met his eyes. "If the backups fail, we execute a controlled shutdown and evacuate the demonstration area. Safety is our top priority." "Safety doesn't secure investor funding," Moss said. "Neither does a lawsuit from injured guests." The room went quiet. Harrington's expression was unreadable. "Ms. Cross, are you suggesting we should postpone?" Everything in Lena wanted to say yes, wanted to tell them the truth, that they were pushing too hard, too fast, that the foundation they were building on was cracked. But she looked around the table at the faces of men who'd built their careers on calculated risks, who saw caution as weakness, who would replace her before lunch if she gave them a reason. "No," she said. "I'm not suggesting we postpone. I'm saying we need to be prepared for contingencies." Harrington nodded slowly. "Then make sure you are." The meeting ended 20 minutes later. Lena gathered her materials and headed for the elevator, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped her tablet. She'd just lied to her bosses, committed herself to an event that could fail spectacularly, put her career on the line for a system she didn't fully trust. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, alone. As the car descended, she caught her reflection in the polished steel, pale, exhausted, terrified. When had she become this person? Someone who chose ambition over honesty? Who threw people under buses to save herself? The elevator stopped on the 18th floor. The doors opened. Evan was standing right there, covered in dust, holding a clipboard. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. Lena stepped out. "How's the cooling system?" "Holding, for now." He studied her face. "How was the rehearsal?" "Fine." "That's not what your face says." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "What does my face say?" "That you just told them everything's under control and you're not sure if you're lying." Lena stared at him. "How did you—" "Because I've been there." Evan set down his clipboard. "When my wife was dying, everyone kept asking me how I was doing, and I kept saying, 'Fine, I'm fine, we're fine,' even when I knew we weren't, even when the doctors were telling me to prepare for the worst, because if I admitted the truth, it meant giving up." Lena felt something crack in her chest. "I'm sorry. About your wife." "Yeah, me too." They stood in the hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "I told them the system would hold," Lena said finally. "Will it?" "I don't know. That's why I'm asking you." Evan considered the question. With continuous monitoring? With someone ready to pull the plug at the first sign of trouble? Maybe, but it's going to be close. Close isn't good enough. "No, it's not. But it's what we've got." Lena nodded, trying to absorb that. "Then we'd better make it work." "That's the plan." She looked at him, really looked at him. This man she'd accused, suspended, nearly destroyed. This man who'd shown up anyway, who'd worked beside her, who'd brought her sandwiches and taught her to read circuit diagrams and somehow made her want to be better than she was. "Evan," she said quietly, "if this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, then we deal with it." His voice was steady, certain. Together. The word hung between them, together, like they were a team, like they were more than just two people trapped in a disaster, trying to survive. Lena wanted to believe it. She wasn't sure she knew how. That afternoon, things started falling apart. First, one of the replacement breakers Evan had installed started throwing fault codes. He spent 2 hours troubleshooting before realizing it was defective, a manufacturing error that should have been caught in quality control, but wasn't. "We need another one," he told Marcus. "I'll call the supplier." "How long?" "Tomorrow morning." "Maybe." Maybe. Everything in this building ran on maybe. While Evan dealt with the breaker, Lena was upstairs fighting a different battle. The catering company had just informed her that they couldn't guarantee power to their equipment during the event. "What do you mean you can't guarantee power?" Lena said into her phone. "We were told the building would have full electrical capacity. Your assistant just informed us that you're running on backup systems. Our equipment requires dedicated circuits. We'll provide dedicated circuits." "By tomorrow?" Lena closed her eyes. "I'll call you back." She hung up and immediately dialed Evan. He answered on the third ring. "Yeah?" "The caterers need dedicated circuits for their equipment. Can we do that?" A pause. "How much power are we talking about?" "I don't know. Commercial ovens, warming stations, refrigeration units." Another pause. Longer this time. "That's a lot of draw. Can we do it or not? Not without taking power from somewhere else." "Where? The presentation systems or the demo equipment? Your choice." Lena felt the walls closing in. "We need both." "Then tell the caterers to bring a generator." "They don't have one." "Then rent one." "In 2 days?" Evan sighed. "Lena, I'm not a miracle worker. We're already running this building on borrowed time. If you want food and lights and working demos, something's going to give." She knew he was right. She hated that he was right. "What if we reduce the guest count?" she said. "How much? Half? That helps, but you're still asking the system to do more than it's designed for." Lena's phone buzzed. Another call. Her assistant. "I have to go," she told Evan. "Lena," but she'd already hung up. The rest of the day spiraled into controlled chaos. Every problem they solved spawned 2 more. The HVAC system started cycling erratically. The network switches began overheating. A water pipe near the server room developed a slow leak that nobody noticed until there was a puddle spreading across the floor. By 8 p.m., Evan was ready to walk into traffic. He stood in the mechanical room on the 19th floor, staring at a pressure gauge that was reading 20 psi higher than it should, and wondered if this was what a nervous breakdown felt like. His phone rang. Maya. He answered immediately. "Hey, sweetheart." "Dad, when are you coming home?" "Never." He was going to die in this building, buried under failed systems and broken promises. "Soon," he said. "How was school?" "Okay. Mrs. Chen made spaghetti." "That's good." "When soon?" Evan checked his watch. "Couple hours. You should get ready for bed." "I'm not tired." "Maya, you said it would only be a few more days. It's been 3 days." "I know. You promised." "I know, sweetheart. And I'm sorry, but this job, it's important." "More important than me?" The question hit like a punch to the gut. "No," Evan said, his voice rough. "Nothing's more important than you. But people are counting on me to make sure they're safe, and if I walk away, someone else can do it. There isn't someone else." Silence on the other end. Then quietly, "You're always leaving." "Maya, Mom left, and then you started leaving too, and I hate it." Evan's throat closed up. "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are. Every night, every morning, you're always gone." "That's different." "No, it's not." He wanted to argue, wanted to explain the difference between work and abandonment, between sacrifice and neglect. But she was 9 years old, and her mother was dead, and her father was never home, and no explanation was going to change how that felt. "You're right." Evan said quietly. I am gone too much, and that's not fair to you, but I promise, after this week things are going to be different. You always say that. This time I mean it. He heard her sigh. Okay. I love you, kiddo. Love you too. The line went dead. Evan stood there with the phone in his hand, the pressure gauge still screaming its warning, and felt the weight of every choice he'd ever made pressing down on him. He was doing this for her. The overtime, the extra shifts, the constant hustle to keep them afloat. But what good was financial security if she grew up thinking she wasn't worth his time? His radio crackled. Marcus. Ryder, we've got another situation. Can you get up to 18? Evan closed his eyes. On my way. When he reached the 18th floor, he found Lena sitting on the floor outside the server room with her head in her hands. What happened? Evan asked. She looked up. Her eyes were red. Everything. That's not specific. The caterers quit, said the liability was too high. My boss just informed me that we can't reduce the guest count because we already confirmed numbers. And the replacement PDU? It's not coming until next week. Evan sat down next to her. The floor was cold, hard, uncomfortable. Exactly how he felt. So what are you going to do? He asked. I don't know. You have to do something. I know. She wiped her eyes. I just don't know what. They sat in silence for a moment. Down the hall, someone's radio squawked. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. When my wife got sick, Evan said, the doctors gave her 6 months, maybe a year if the treatment worked. And for the first few weeks, I kept trying to fix it, researching experimental treatments, calling specialists, refusing to accept that some things can't be fixed. Lena turned to look at him. And then one day, Evan continued, she told me to stop. Said I was wasting the time we had left trying to change an ending we couldn't control. Said what she needed wasn't a cure. It was me, present, honest, real. What did you do? I stopped trying to fix it, started just being there. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done. He paused. Sometimes the brave choice isn't fighting. It's accepting what you can't change and focusing on what you can. Lena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Are you telling me to cancel the event? I'm telling you that you have a choice. You can keep pushing forward, hoping nothing breaks. Or you can be honest about the risks and let the people in charge make an informed decision. They'll fire me. Maybe. Or maybe they'll respect you for telling the truth. She laughed. You don't know these people. No. But I know you're not the person who accused me in that lobby. You're better than that. You've proven it. Lena's breath hitched. How? By showing up every day. By learning from me instead of dismissing me. By caring enough to get your hands dirty. He gestured at her outfit. Designer clothes covered in grime and cable grease. Look at you. You're a mess. Thanks. I mean it as a compliment. A week ago, you cared more about looking right than being right. Now you're sitting on a dirty floor covered in dust, trying to figure out how to do the right thing even though it might cost you everything. He smiled. That's growth. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. I'm scared. Good. That means you're paying attention. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing the dust. If I tell them the truth, they'll cancel the event. 200 investors will go home. The company loses the funding. People get laid off. And if you don't tell them the truth and something goes wrong, people could get hurt. Yeah. Lena leaned her head back against the wall. This is impossible. Most important decisions are. She turned to him. What would you do? I'd tell the truth, but I'm not the one who has to live with the consequences. They sat there, two people at the end of their ropes, trying to figure out which way to fall. Finally, Lena pulled out her phone. I need to make a call. You want privacy? No, stay. Evan watched as she dialed. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. Mr. Harrington, Lena said, her voice steady. I need to talk to you about the event. Evan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he watched Lena's face as she spoke, watched her explain the failures, the risks, the impossible choice between safety and success. I understand the financial implications, she was saying. I understand what's at stake. But I can't in good conscience tell you this system is safe when I know it might fail. And if it fails with 200 people in the building... She paused, listening. Yes, sir, I understand what I'm saying. I'm recommending we postpone. Another pause. Longer this time. Lena's knuckles were white around the phone. Then she said, I understand. Yes, I'll submit my resignation in writing. Evan's stomach dropped. Thank you, Lena said quietly, and ended the call. She set the phone down and stared at it like it might explode. They fired you, Evan said. Technically, I resigned, but yes, for telling them the truth, for prioritizing safety over profit, which, in their view, is the same as failure. Evan wanted to tell her she'd made the right choice, that integrity mattered, that doing the right thing was its own reward. But he looked at her sitting there, young, brilliant, unemployed, and knew how hollow those words would sound. I'm sorry, he said instead. Lena nodded. Me too. They sat in silence for a while. Then Lena said, They're going ahead with the event anyway. Evan's head snapped up. What? Harrington said they'd find someone else to manage it, someone who understands that in business, risk is unavoidable. That's insane. That's capitalism. Lena, you can't let them... I don't have a choice. I just quit. I don't work here anymore. Evan stood up. Then I quit too. What? I'm not going to help them kill people just because they're too stubborn to admit they're wrong. Lena grabbed his arm. Evan, you need this job. Not this badly. Yes, you do. You have a daughter, bills. You can't afford to... I can't afford to live with myself if something happens. He pulled away from her grip. I'm done. He turned to walk away. Wait! Evan stopped. Lena stood, her face set with determination. If they're going ahead with the event, we need to make sure it doesn't fail. We just quit. So what? The event's in 2 days. They won't have time to find replacements who know the system like we do, which means if we walk away, people die. And if we stay, we work for free to clean up their mess. We work to protect 200 people who have no idea they're walking into a death trap. Evan stared at her. You're serious? Yes, they just fired you. I know. And you want to help them anyway. I want to help the people who'll be in this building. That's different. Evan thought about Maya, about the promise he'd made to be there for her, about the fact that working for free meant no paycheck, which meant the bills stacking up at home would keep stacking. But he also thought about what would happen if the system failed during the event. The panic, the injuries, the inevitable inquiry that would trace everything back to the warnings he'd filed, the risks he'd documented, the blame he'd carry for the rest of his life if he walked away. Okay, he said. Okay? We stay. We make sure it's safe. And then we walk away and never look back. Lena nodded. Deal. They shook hands like they were sealing a contract written in desperation and held together by nothing but stubborn principle. Then they got back to work. Over the next 36 hours, Evan and Lena became ghosts in the building. They showed up before anyone else arrived and stayed long after everyone left. They rerouted systems, installed redundancies, mapped every possible failure point. Marcus helped when he could, but he was bound by building management's restrictions. So Evan and Lena worked around him, under him, sometimes despite him. They jury-rigged a generator to power the critical cooking equipment. They installed manual overrides on every automatic system. They created physical maps showing evacuation routes and emergency shut-off locations. And they made sure every security guard had one. And through it all, they barely spoke. Not because they were angry, but because they'd run out of words. Everything that needed to be said had been said. Now, it was just work. On the morning of the event, Evan stood in the server room at 5 a.m. running one final systems check. Everything looked good, which meant nothing. Systems always looked good until they didn't. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Good luck today, Dad. I love you. He typed back, Love you too, kiddo. See you tonight. If he survived. At 6 a.m., Lena showed up carrying 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need this, she said, handing him one. Thanks. They stood there sipping coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and watched the sun rise through the windows. You ready? Lena asked. No. Me neither. That makes me feel so much better. She smiled. We're going to pull this off. You sound pretty confident for someone who got fired yesterday. I'm faking it. How's that working out? Ask me in 12 hours. At 8 a.m., the investors started arriving. Expensive suits, polished shoes, confidence that came from never having to worry about whether the lights would stay on. Evan watched them from the 18th floor, tiny figures moving through the lobby below, and wondered if any of them had any idea how close they were to disaster. By 9 a.m., the building was at capacity. 200 people, plus staff, plus caterers, plus the presentation team. The backup systems were running hot but stable. Evan positioned himself in the mechanical room with a direct line to Lena, who was stationed at the monitoring terminal near the main event space. "Systems check," he said into his radio. "All green," Lena replied. "Temps holding at 82 degrees. Power draw is steady. HVAC? Cycling normally. Network? All nodes responding." Evan exhaled. So far, so good. At 10 a.m., the presentations began. Evan listened through his radio as Lena relayed updates, guest speakers, product demos, everything running smoothly, too smoothly. He stared at the monitoring screens, waiting for the other shoe to drop. At 11:30, it did. "Evan," Lena's voice came through the radio, tight with tension. "We've got a temperature spike. PDU-2 just jumped to 98 degrees. That's inside tolerance." "Barely." Evan pulled up the thermal readout. The backup PDU was running hotter than it should, but not hot enough to trigger an alarm. Yet. "Keep watching it," he said. "If it hits 105, we pull the plug." "Understood." 5 minutes later. "Evan, 103. I see it. What do we do?" Evan's mind raced through options. They could increase cooling, but that would strain the HVAC system. They could reduce load, but that meant shutting down non-critical systems, including half the presentation equipment, or they could pray it stabilized. "Hold position," Evan said. "Let me see if I can reroute some of the draw." He moved quickly, his hands working through circuits and breakers, trying to find slack in the system that wasn't there. Come on, come on! The temperature climbed to 104, 105. "Evan, I know!" 106. And then, impossibly, it started to drop. 105, 104, 102. Evan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "We're stable," he said. "For now," Lena replied. At noon, they served lunch. The cooking equipment pulled exactly as much power as Evan had calculated, which was already more than he'd wanted, but less than catastrophic. At 1 p.m., the main presentation began. And at 1:45, Evan's worst nightmare came true. The lights flickered. Not a lot. Just enough to notice. "Lena," Evan said into the radio. "I saw it." "What's the draw?" 92% of capacity. Too high. Way too high. "We need to shut down something. The presentation's running. I can't." The lights flickered again. This time people noticed. Evan could hear the murmur of concern through the walls. "Lena," he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. "We're out of time. Either we shut down non-critical systems now, or the whole thing crashes." A pause. Then, "Do it." Evan started killing power to everything that wasn't life support or emergency systems. Conference room lights, decorative features, half the climate control. The building plunged into a dimmer, warmer version of itself. And the main presentation kept running. People were definitely noticing now. Evan could hear the buzz of confusion, the shuffling of feet. But the lights stayed on. The presentation continued, and slowly, gradually, the power draw started to stabilize. At 3 p.m., the event ended. At 3:15, the guests started leaving. At 3:30, Evan stood in the mechanical room, staring at the screens, and realized they'd actually done it. They'd pulled off the impossible. His radio crackled. "Evan?" "Yeah." "We did it." "Yeah." "I can't believe we did it." "Yeah." He heard her laugh. Exhausted, relieved, slightly hysterical. "I need to sit down." "Same." "Meet me in the server room?" "Give me 5 minutes." When Evan got there, Lena was sitting on the floor again, exactly where they'd sat 2 nights ago. He sat down next to her. "That was close," she said. "Too close. But we made it. This time." She turned to look at him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For staying. For not giving up. For being better than everyone who told you to walk away." Evan shrugged. Couldn't let you have all the fun. Lena smiled, then leaned her head on his shoulder. It was a small gesture, simple, but it felt like a shift in gravity. Evan didn't move, didn't speak, just sat there with this woman who'd gone from enemy to partner to something he couldn't quite name, and let himself breathe for the first time in days. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, for just a moment, everything was still. They sat there for maybe 10 minutes before reality crept back in. Evan's radio crackled. Marcus. Ryder, building management wants a post-event debrief. You around? Evan grabbed the radio. Yeah, where? 3rd floor, 20 minutes. He looked at Lena. You coming? I don't work here anymore, remember? Neither do I, apparently. But I'm going anyway. She stood, brushing dust off her pants. Then I guess we're both unemployed idiots walking into a meeting we weren't invited to. Sounds about right. The conference room on the 3rd floor was packed. Building management, facilities, security. Senior partners from Lena's former company. Everyone who had a stake in whether the event had been a success or a lawsuit waiting to happen. When Evan and Lena walked in, the room went quiet. Richard Harrington sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Miss Cross, Mr. Ryder, I wasn't expecting you. We wanted to make sure you had the full picture, Lena said evenly. The full picture is that the event concluded without incident. The investors were impressed. We're moving forward with funding negotiations. Harrington leaned back in his chair. So, I'm not sure what you think you're adding. The part where your building almost killed everyone, Evan said. The room went very still. Excuse me? Said Gerald Moss, the partner who'd questioned Lena during her rehearsal. Evan pulled out his tablet and set it on the table. At 1:45 p.m., the electrical system hit 92% of backup capacity. The main PDU was running at 106 degrees, 20 degrees over safe operating temperature. We had to shut down half the building's non-critical systems to prevent a total failure. But you prevented it, Harrington said, this time. But if we'd been running the system at full capacity like you originally planned, it would have blown. And when backup systems fail, they don't fail gracefully. You would have had a building full of people in the dark, with no climate control, and possibly no fire suppression. Moss leaned forward. Are you trying to scare us, Mr. Ryder? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you got away with. We didn't get away with anything. We executed a successful event under challenging circumstances. You gambled with people's lives. We made a calculated business decision. Evan's hands curled into fists under the table. A calculated decision that ignored every safety recommendation I filed for 8 months. Those recommendations were reviewed and deemed non-critical. By who? The same people who signed off on the substandard wiring in the first place? Harrington held up a hand. Gentlemen, this is not productive. You're right, Evan said, standing. It's not. Because you're not interested in fixing the problem. You're interested in covering it up. That's not fair, said Patricia Voss, the HR director. We're committed to building safety. Then why didn't you act on my reports? Because we have protocols, procedures. We can't shut down a building every time someone files a maintenance complaint. I didn't file a complaint. I filed a safety violation, multiple violations, with photographic evidence and code citations, and you ignored them because addressing them would have cost money. The room erupted into overlapping arguments. Voices rising, accusations flying, everyone trying to defend their position while simultaneously shifting blame. Lena watched it all with a strange detachment. This was the world she'd been fighting to succeed in. A world where safety was negotiable, where integrity was a liability, where the only thing that mattered was the bottom line. She'd thought she wanted to be part of it. Now she wasn't so sure. Enough, Harrington said, his voice cutting through the noise. Ms. Cross, you submitted your resignation, Mr. Ryder. You've made your position clear. I think we're done here. Not quite, Lena said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood, pulling out her own tablet. Before I resigned, I compiled a full report on the electrical failures, system vulnerabilities, code violations, every shortcut that was taken during the building's renovation, every warning that was ignored, every decision that prioritized profit over safety. Harrington's face went very still. What are you doing with that report? Right now? Nothing. It's sitting in a folder on my computer. And you're telling us this because I want you to understand what's at stake. If another event happens in this building and someone gets hurt, that report becomes evidence. Evidence that you were warned, that you knew about the risks, that you chose to do nothing. Moss stood up, his face red. Are you threatening us? I'm informing you. There's a difference. This is extortion. No, Lena said calmly. Extortion would be me demanding something in exchange for keeping quiet. I'm not demanding anything. I'm just making sure you know that the truth is documented. What you do with that information is up to you. Harrington stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Get out." Gladly. Lena grabbed her tablet and walked toward the door. Evan followed. Behind them, the room erupted again. They made it to the elevator before Lena started shaking. "Did I really just do that?" she said. "Yeah. I just threatened my former employer with legal exposure. Technically, you just stated facts. They're going to bury me." "Maybe," Evan said. "Or maybe they'll fix the building because they're too scared not to." The elevator arrived. They stepped inside. As the doors closed, Lena leaned against the wall and laughed. "I can't believe we survived that." "Which part? The event or the meeting?" "Both." Evan smiled. "Yeah, me neither." They rode down in silence. When they reached the lobby, Lena stopped. "I don't know what to do now," she said. "What do you mean?" "I just blew up my career, burned every bridge. I have no job, no references, and I probably just made myself unemployable in this entire industry. So do something else." "Like what?" Evan shrugged. "I don't know. But you're smart, you're capable, you'll figure it out." "That's not very reassuring." "It's honest." Lena looked at him, this man who'd shown her what integrity looked like even when it cost everything. "What about you? What are you going to do?" "Go home, hug my daughter, sleep for about 3 days. And then? Find another job, keep showing up, same as always." "That's it?" "That's enough." She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he deserved more than just showing up, that he should demand better, fight for something bigger. But she looked at his face, tired, honest, content with the simple truth that he'd done the right thing, and realized he already had everything he needed. He knew who he was. She wasn't sure she could say the same. "Evan," she said as he turned to leave, "thank you for everything." He paused. "You already thanked me. I know, but I mean it. You didn't have to help me. You didn't have to stay. You could have walked away a dozen times and nobody would have blamed you, but you didn't, and I don't think I'll ever be able to repay that." "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do." Evan smiled. "Then pay it forward. Next time you see someone getting blamed for something that isn't their fault, speak up. That's all the payment I need." He walked out into the afternoon sun, leaving Lena standing in the lobby of a building that no longer felt like home. She watched him go, then pulled out her phone and called her assistant, former assistant. "Hey, it's Lena." "Yeah, I know. Listen, I need you to do me a favor. That report I compiled, send it to the city building inspector's office, anonymously." A pause. Then, "Are you sure?" "Yeah," Lena said, "I'm sure." She hung up and walked out into the city, unemployed and uncertain and somehow more at peace than she'd been in years. 3 days later, the story broke. City inspectors raided the building, armed with an anonymous tip and a very detailed report outlining code violations dating back 5 years. The investigation moved quickly, and within a week, criminal charges were filed against the building's ownership group and the original contracting company. Evan read about it in the news while making breakfast for Maya. "Dad," Maya said, syrup dripping from her fork, "is that your building?" "Used to be." "Are you in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. I'm the one who tried to fix it." "Did you?" Evan thought about the burnt PDU, the jury-rigged systems, the event they'd barely survived. "Sort of. That's good, right?" "Yeah, that's good." His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Mr. Ryder, this is David Chen from Apex Construction. I'm calling about a position we have open for a senior facilities manager." Evan blinked. "I didn't apply for anything." "We received your resume from a referral, along with a very strong recommendation from someone named Lena Cross." Evan's chest tightened. "She recommended me." She said, and I quote, "Evan Ryder is the most competent, principled, and unfairly overlooked professional I've ever worked with. If you don't hire him, you're making a mistake. Evan didn't know what to say. The position comes with a 20% salary increase over your previous role, Chen continued, plus benefits and standard business hours. No night shifts unless there's an emergency. Are you interested? Yes, I'm interested. Excellent. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow? Absolutely. He hung up and stared at the phone. Maya looked up at him. What happened? I think I just got a job offer. That's good, right? Evan laughed. Yeah, kiddo, that's really good. That night, after Maya was asleep, Evan pulled out his phone and typed a message to Lena. You didn't have to do that. Her response came almost immediately. Yes, I did. You saved my life. Least I could do was save your career. I didn't save your life. You saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be. Same thing. Evan smiled. Thank you. You're welcome. Now go ace that interview. He set the phone down and looked around his small apartment. Same peeling paint, same creaky floors, same life he'd been living for the past 4 years. But somehow, it felt different. Lighter. Like maybe the weight he'd been carrying was finally starting to ease. 2 weeks later, Evan started his new job. The work was similar. Facilities management, system oversight, the same technical challenges he'd always handled. But the culture was different. People listened when he flagged problems. Management took safety seriously. And for the first time in years, Evan felt like his expertise was valued instead of tolerated. He worked normal hours, came home for dinner, helped Maya with homework, slowly started to feel like a father again instead of just a paycheck. And every few days, he'd get a text from Lena. Sometimes it was a meme, sometimes a question about electrical systems because she'd decided to take an engineering course online, sometimes just a random thought she wanted to share. They'd become friends. Strange, unexpected friends who'd met in the worst circumstances and somehow found their way to something better. One Saturday afternoon, Evan's doorbell rang. He opened it to find Lena standing there with a bottle of wine and a slightly nervous expression. Hi, she said. Hi. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd stop by. Is that weird? That's probably weird. I should have called first. Evan smiled. It's fine, come in. She stepped inside, looking around at the modest apartment with curiosity rather than judgment. So this is where you live? This is it? It's nice. It's small. Small is cozy. Maya appeared from her room, took one look at Lena and said, Are you Dad's girlfriend? Lena's eyes went wide. No, I'm just a friend. Okay. Maya shrugged and went back to her room. Evan laughed. Sorry, she's direct. I like direct, Lena held up the wine. I brought this, but I'm realizing you might not drink, and this might be completely inappropriate, and I'm going to stop talking now. I drink, occasionally. Evan took the bottle. Let me get glasses. They sat on his worn couch, drinking cheap wine from mismatched glasses, and talked about everything and nothing. Lena told him about the consulting work she'd picked up, helping small companies audit their systems for safety compliance. Evan told her about his new job, about Maya's latest school project, about the weird satisfaction of finally working somewhere that didn't make him want to quit every day. You seem happy, Lena said. I am. Good. You deserve it. So do you. She smiled. I'm getting there. Maya wandered out eventually, drawn by the sound of laughter. She climbed onto the couch next to Evan and studied Lena with open curiosity. You're the one from Dad's old job, she said. That's right. He talks about you sometimes. Evan felt his face heat up. Maya, he says you're really smart, but you used to be kind of mean. Lena laughed. He's not wrong. But you're not mean anymore? I'm trying not to be. Good. Dad needs friends. Maya, Evan said. Maybe give us some privacy. Why? Are you going to kiss her? No. Then why do you need privacy? Lena was trying very hard not to laugh. Homework, Evan said firmly. Go. Maya rolled her eyes but complied, disappearing back into her room. Sorry, Evan said again. Don't be. She's great. She's a handful. All the best people are. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lena said, Can I tell you something? Sure. That week we spent fixing the building, That was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the first time in my life I felt like I was doing something that actually mattered. Not for a performance review, not for a promotion, just because it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing. I know, and I have you to thank for showing me what that looks like. Evan shook his head. You would have figured it out on your own. Maybe. But it would have taken longer, and I might have hurt more people along the way. You're being too hard on yourself. I accused you of sabotage in front of witnesses. I tried to destroy your career because I was scared. She set down her wine glass. That's not being too hard on myself. That's just facts. And you apologized, and you made it right. People make mistakes, Lena. It's what you do after that matters. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Evan felt something shift in the space between them, something that had been building since that first night in the server room, when they'd gone from enemies to allies to something neither of them had a name for yet. Evan, she said softly. Her phone rang. She glanced at it, grimaced, and declined the call. Sorry. Important? Just my mother. She's been calling all week to tell me how disappointed she is that I threw away my career for principles. Sounds supportive. She means well. She just doesn't understand why I'd choose integrity over success. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Try telling her that. Lena picked up her wine glass again. She wanted me to be a lawyer, corporate law, make partner by 30. Instead, I'm a 23-year-old consultant working out of a coffee shop. Are you happy? Honestly? Yeah, I am. For the first time since college, I'm doing work I actually believe in. She paused. Is that naive? No, that's rare. They talked until the wine was gone and the sun had set. When Lena finally stood to leave, Evan walked her to the door. Thanks for stopping by, he said. Thanks for not thinking it was weird. It was a little weird. She laughed. Fair. They stood in the doorway, neither quite ready to end the evening. Evan, Lena said, would you want to get dinner sometime, like actual dinner at a restaurant? Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking if you'd like to spend time together in a context that doesn't involve imminent electrical failure. Evan smiled. Yeah, I'd like that. Really? Really? Okay, good. She looked genuinely relieved. I'll text you. Sounds good. She turned to leave, then stopped. Hey, Evan? Yeah? I'm really glad I met you, even if it started terribly. Me too. She left, and Evan closed the door, leaning against it with a stupid grin on his face. Maya appeared from her room. You like her? Go to bed. You do. I can tell. Maya. It's okay, Dad. I like her too. Evan looked at his daughter, this wise, observant kid who saw through every defense he tried to put up. Yeah? Yeah, she makes you smile. A lot of things make me smile. Not like that. Evan pulled her into a hug. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just don't pay attention. I pay attention. Not always. He kissed the top of her head. You're right. I'm sorry. It's okay. You're doing better now. Yeah, Evan said quietly. I am. The next morning, Evan got a call from the city building inspector's office. They wanted him to testify in the case against the building's ownership group. His maintenance reports, his documentation, his first-hand account of the safety violations, all of it was crucial evidence. Will I have to go to court? Evan asked. Possibly, but most likely this will settle before trial. Your testimony is strong enough that they'll want to avoid it going public. What happens if they settle? They pay fines, possibly face criminal charges for gross negligence, and the building gets a full safety overhaul. It was more than Evan had hoped for. That evening, he called Lena. They want me to testify, he said. Are you going to do it? Yeah? Good. Those bastards deserve everything coming to them. Evan laughed. Tell me how you really feel. I'm serious. They knew. They all knew. And they chose profit over safety. If your testimony puts them out of business, I'll sleep better at night. It's not about revenge. No, it's about accountability, which is somehow more satisfying. They talked for an hour about the case, about Lena's new consulting projects, about Maya's upcoming school play. She invited me, by the way, Lena said. To the play? Yeah, she sent me an invitation, hand-drawn. It has glitter. Evan felt his chest tighten. You don't have to come. I want to, if that's okay. It's okay. Then I'll be there. After they hung up, Evan sat on his couch and stared at the phone. His life was changing, not in dramatic ways, not with grand gestures or sweeping transformations, but in small, quiet moments that added up to something bigger. A job that respected him, a daughter who felt seen, a friend, maybe more than a friend, who made him believe that good things were still possible. For years, Evan had been stuck, surviving but not living, going through motions without feeling them. Now, finally, he was starting to move forward. The night of Maya's play, Evan sat in the school auditorium, surrounded by other parents, feeling both proud and terrified. Maya had the lead role, a brave girl who went on a quest to save her village, and she'd been rehearsing nonstop for weeks. Lena slipped into the seat next to him just as the lights dimmed. "Made it," she whispered. "Glad you're here." The play was exactly what you'd expect from a fourth-grade production. Missed cues, forgotten lines, costumes held together with safety pins and hope. But Maya was perfect, confident, bright, everything Evan had hoped she'd be. When it ended, they stood and applauded until their hands hurt. Afterward, in the lobby, Maya ran up to them, still wearing her costume. "Did you see me?" "You were amazing," Evan said, pulling her into a hug. "You really were," Lena added. "I believed every word." Maya beamed. "Thanks for coming. Wouldn't miss it." As they walked out to the parking lot, Maya slipped her hand into Evan's, then reached out and grabbed Lena's hand too. "Can we get ice cream?" she asked. Evan looked at Lena, who smiled and nodded. "Yeah," Evan said. "We can get ice cream." They went to a diner down the street, the kind with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that only played oldies. Maya ordered a sundae bigger than her head and talked non-stop about the play, about her friends, about everything and nothing. Lena listened like every word mattered, and Evan watched them both, his daughter and this woman who'd come into his life like a storm and somehow become part of its foundation, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging kind that comes from fear, but the quiet, steady kind that comes from knowing you're not alone anymore. When they dropped Lena off at her apartment later, Maya hugged her goodbye. "You should come over more," Maya said. "I'd like that." "Dad likes it too. He just won't say it." Evan groaned. "Maya," Lena laughed. "I'll see you soon, okay?" "Okay." They drove home in comfortable silence. When they got there, Evan tucked Maya into bed and listened to her talk about the play until her words got slower and slower and finally stopped altogether. He stood in her doorway, watching her sleep, and thought about Sarah, about how much she would have loved tonight, how proud she would have been. And for the first time since she died, Evan didn't feel guilty for being happy. He felt grateful. Grateful that he'd survived the worst thing that could happen to him. Grateful that he'd found his way back to something resembling joy. Grateful that maybe, just maybe, the hardest parts were behind him. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Thank you for letting me be part of tonight. It meant more than you know." Evan typed back, "Thank you for showing up. Always." He set the phone down and went to bed, and for the first time in 4 years, he slept without dreams of things falling apart. 3 months passed like water through open hands. The building case settled out of court. The ownership group paid 7 figures in fines, 2 executives faced criminal charges, and the entire structure was shut down for a mandatory safety overhaul. Evan's testimony had been the nail in the coffin. His meticulous documentation, his ignored warnings, his first-hand account of a system designed to fail. The media picked up the story. Local news ran segments about negligent landlords and the invisible workers who tried to protect people. Evan's face appeared on television for exactly 30 seconds, long enough for him to look uncomfortable and say, "I was just doing my job." But it wasn't just a job. It never had been. It was about the people who walked into buildings every day, assuming someone cared whether they made it home safely. It was about the single mothers and overworked fathers and kids going to school who deserved better than corners cut for profit margins. Evan went back to work at Apex Construction the day after the settlement was announced. His coworkers treated him like a minor celebrity for about a week before everything returned to normal, which was exactly how Evan wanted it. Normal meant picking Maya up from school on time. Normal meant helping with homework at the kitchen table instead of through exhausted phone calls from job sites. Normal meant weekend mornings, drinking coffee while Maya watched cartoons, her feet tucked under his leg like an anchor. And normal, increasingly, meant Lena. She'd become part of their routine in ways Evan hadn't planned but couldn't imagine living without. Sunday dinners, movie nights where Maya picked films that made Evan want to sleep and Lena genuinely enjoyed. Homework sessions where Lena explained math concepts in ways that actually made sense. Maya adored her. That was the simplest truth. Evan's feelings were more complicated. He'd spent 4 years building walls, convincing himself that he and Maya were fine on their own, that letting anyone else in meant risking the kind of loss that had nearly destroyed him when Sarah died. But Lena didn't feel like a risk. She felt like someone who understood that life was hard and messy and sometimes unfair and showed up anyway. One Saturday in late spring, Evan was fixing the sink in his apartment when Maya appeared in the doorway with her phone. "Lena wants to know if we're free for dinner tonight." "We're always free for dinner," Evan said, wrestling with a stuck pipe fitting. "She said she wants to cook for us, at her place." Evan looked up. "Really?" "That's what she said." "What'd you tell her?" "That I'd ask you, but you'd probably say yes because you like her." Maya. "What? It's true." Evan set down his wrench. "And what about you? Do you like her?" Maya rolled her eyes like the question was stupid. Obviously. "Dad, she's basically here all the time already. We like her. She likes us. Why are you being weird about it?" "I'm not being weird." "You are. You get this look on your face whenever she texts, like you're happy but also scared. It's weird." Evan sighed. "Okay, fine. I'm weird. Tell her yes." "Already did." "Then why'd you ask me?" "Because it's polite." Maya disappeared back to her room. Maya. Evan stared at the ceiling, water dripping from the pipe he'd forgotten to tighten, and wondered when his 9-year-old daughter had become smarter than him about relationships. Lena's apartment was in a converted warehouse downtown. Exposed brick, high ceilings, the kind of space that felt both industrial and warm. She answered the door wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. "Hey," she said, smiling. "Come in." The apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Music played softly from a speaker in the corner. Maya immediately gravitated toward a bookshelf filled with engineering texts and random curiosities. "What's this?" she asked, holding up a small metal sculpture. "A gyroscope." "Here, I'll show you how it works." Evan watched them together, Lena patiently explaining angular momentum while Maya listened with complete focus and felt his chest tighten in a way that was equal parts wonderful and terrifying. "Can I help with anything?" he asked. Lena glanced over. "You can open the wine. Glasses are in the cabinet above the sink." They ate at her small dining table, pasta with homemade sauce, salad, bread that Lena admitted she'd bought from the bakery downstairs because she'd burned the first batch. "I'm not a great cook," she said, "but I'm trying." "It's perfect," Maya said through a mouthful of pasta. "Manners," Evan reminded her. "Sorry." "It's perfect," Maya said again, swallowing this time. Lena laughed. "I'll take it." After dinner, Maya curled up on Lena's couch with a book, while Evan helped clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, Evan washing dishes while Lena dried and put them away. "Thank you for coming," Lena said quietly. "Thank you for having us." "I wanted—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I wanted you to see my space, to know that this isn't just me showing up in your life, that I have a life too, and I want you both to be part of it." Evan set down the dish he was holding. "Lena, I know this is complicated. I know you have Maya to think about. I know you've been through things I can't fully understand, but I also know that what we have, whatever this is, it matters to me. And I needed you to know that." Evan dried his hands on a towel, his heart hammering. "It matters to me too." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They stood in her small kitchen, the last of the evening light filtering through the windows, and Evan made a choice. He kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. Wasn't some movie-perfect moment with swelling music and perfect timing. It was just two people who'd been through hell together, who'd learned to trust each other when trust felt impossible, finally admitting what had been building for months. When they pulled apart, Lena smiled. "Took you long enough. I'm a slow learner." "I've noticed." From the couch, Maya's voice carried over. Are you guys done being gross? Because I want dessert. Lena laughed, her forehead still pressed against Evan's. We should probably... Yeah. They served ice cream and watched Maya demolish hers while asking Lena increasingly complex questions about physics. Evan sat back and watched them, this woman and this child who'd somehow become the center of his world, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because his life was perfect. It wasn't. The apartment still had peeling paint. The bills still piled up faster than he could pay them. Maya still asked hard questions about her mother that Evan didn't always know how to answer. But he wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. A week later, Evan got a call from an unexpected source. Mr. Ryder, this is Richard Harrington. Evan nearly dropped his phone. Mr. Harrington, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I imagine not. Listen, I'll be direct. The building case settlement included a provision requiring a complete overhaul of our safety protocols. We need someone to oversee it. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. Someone who won't be pressured into cutting corners. And you're calling me because? Because you were right. About everything. The wiring, the violations, the risks we ignored. And because I'd rather have you working for us than testifying against us in the next lawsuit. Evan almost laughed. That's honest. I'm too old to be anything else. Harrington paused. The position comes with a significant salary increase, full benefits, and complete authority over safety decisions, no overrides, no exceptions. Why should I believe that? Because the alternative is another settlement that might actually bankrupt us. We've learned our lesson, Mr. Ryder, the hard way. But we've learned it. Evan thought about it. Thought about going back to the building where everything had started. Thought about the irony of being offered a job by the people who'd tried to bury him. I need to think about it, he said. Take your time. The offer stands. That night, Evan talked it over with Lena. They sat on his couch, Maya asleep in her room, speaking in low voices. What do you think? He asked. I think it's your decision. That's not helpful. Lena smiled. Okay, honest opinion? It sounds like a trap. That's what I thought too. But, she continued, it also sounds like an opportunity to actually fix the system instead of just complaining about it. You'd have real power, real authority. You could make sure what happened there never happens again. Or I could end up right back where I started, fighting the same battles, getting ignored until something breaks. Maybe, but you'd be fighting with leverage this time. They need you. They know it. That's power. Evan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. What would you do? I'd negotiate. Hard. Get everything in writing. Make sure they understand that if they try to undermine you, you walk and take your documentation to every news outlet in the city. You're scary when you're strategic. I learned from the best. He looked at her. I'm not the best at anything. You're the best at showing up when it matters. At doing the right thing even when it costs you. At being someone people can count on. She took his hand. That's not nothing, Evan. He thought about that, about the choices he'd made, the stands he'd taken, the times he'd wanted to quit but didn't. I'm going to call him back, Evan said, but I'm setting terms, real terms, and if they balk, I walk. Good. The negotiations took 2 weeks. Evan insisted on complete authority over safety decisions, an independent review board, quarterly audits, and a clause that guaranteed if he was ever overridden on a safety issue, he could resign immediately with a year's severance. Harrington agreed to all of it. You drive a hard bargain, he said during their final meeting. I learned that the hard way. I imagine you did. Harrington extended his hand. Welcome back, Mr. Ryder, or should I say, Director Ryder. Evan shook it. Just Evan is fine. Fair enough. Just don't make me regret this. I could say the same to you. Evan started the new position on a Monday in June. The building was still under renovation, crews everywhere, systems being torn out and rebuilt to code, inspectors monitoring every step. It felt like vindication, like proof that speaking up, standing firm, refusing to accept dangerous compromises actually mattered. His first day, he walked through every floor, taking notes, asking questions, making sure the contractors understood that cutting corners wasn't an option anymore. On the 18th floor, he stood in the server room where everything had started. The burnt PDU was gone, replaced with a new system installed to spec. The wiring was clean, The ventilation was proper. Everything was exactly as it should have been from the beginning. Marcus found him there. Crazy, right? Marcus said, seeing it all fixed. Yeah. You did this, you know. None of this happens if you don't make noise. A lot of people made noise. But you made noise that mattered. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. Good to have you back, boss. I'm not your boss. Yeah, you are. Director of Safety Operations. Says so on your door. Evan smiled. Still getting used to that. Get used to it fast. We've got a lot of work to do. They did. For months, Evan worked alongside engineers, contractors, and inspectors to rebuild the building's infrastructure from the ground up. It was exhausting, frustrating. Sometimes he wanted to quit because people still pushed back, still tried to find cheaper solutions, still acted like safety was optional. But he had authority now, he had leverage, and he had a team that respected him. Slowly, the building became what it should have been all along. Safe, functional, a place where people could work without wondering if the systems holding their lives together were one bad decision away from collapse. And through it all, Lena was there. Not at the building. She had her own work, her own projects. But she was there in the evenings, listening to Evan talk through the day's challenges. There on weekends, helping Maya with school projects. There in the small, steady ways that made life feel less like survival and more like living. 6 months after Evan started his new job, Maya came home from school with a permission slip. There's a father-daughter dance, she said, sliding the paper across the table. Next month. Can we go? Evan's throat tightened. Sarah had always handled these things. She'd been the one who knew how to braid hair, pick out dresses, take photos that didn't look like hostage situations. Yeah, he said. Of course we can go. Maya beamed. Can Lena help me find a dress? I'm sure she'd love that. Good. Because you have terrible taste. Hey. It's true, Dad. Your wardrobe is like 70% work shirts. They're practical. They're boring. Evan laughed despite himself. Fine. Lena can help. The dress shopping expedition became a full-day event. Lena and Maya hit 3 stores before finding the perfect dress, blue with silver stars, because Maya insisted on something cosmic. Evan saw the photos Lena sent and felt his heart do something complicated. The night of the dance, Evan wore his nicest shirt, which Maya approved after changing his tie twice, and drove them to the school gymnasium. The place was packed with fathers and daughters, all dressed up, all trying to pretend they knew how to dance. Evan felt massively out of his depth until Maya grabbed his hand and dragged him onto the floor. Come on, Dad. It's easy. I'm not a good dancer. Nobody here is. That's the point. So Evan danced, badly, stepping on Maya's toes, counting beats wrong, feeling like an idiot while his daughter laughed and didn't care at all. During a slow song, Maya looked up at him. Are you going to marry Lena? Evan nearly tripped. What? You heard me. We haven't talked about that. But you're thinking about it. Maya. It's okay if you are. I like her. I think Mom would have liked her too. Evan's vision blurred. You think so? Yeah. Mom would have wanted you to be happy. And you're happy with Lena. I'm happy with you. I know, but you're happier with both of us. Maya rested her head against his chest. It's okay to love more than one person, Dad. There's room. Evan held his daughter close, breathing through the tightness in his chest, and realized she was right. There was room. For Lena. For joy. For a future that didn't mean forgetting the past, but building something new alongside it. 2 weeks later, Evan asked Lena to move in. They were at his apartment, washing dishes after dinner, when he said it. I've been thinking, Evan started. Your lease is up next month, right? Yeah, why? What if you didn't renew it? Lena turned to look at him. What are you saying? I'm saying this place is small, but we could make it work, or we could find somewhere bigger, together, all of us. I know it's fast. I know we haven't been together that long, but it also feels like we've been doing this forever. You're already here most nights. Maya considers you family, and He set down the dish he was holding. I love you. I want you here, permanently. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Yes. Yes? Yes, you idiot. Of course, yes. Evan kissed her, laughing, feeling lighter than he had in years. They told Maya that night. She reacted by saying, Finally, I've been waiting forever for you guys to figure this out. We weren't that slow, Evan protested. Dad, it's been like 8 months. That's not that long. In kid time, it's forever, Lena laughed. She has a point. They found a bigger apartment across town. 2 bedrooms, decent kitchen, close to Maya's school. It wasn't fancy. The floors creaked and the heating was temperamental. But it was theirs. Moving day was chaos. Boxes everywhere. Furniture that didn't quite fit. Arguments about where things should go. But by the end of it, they'd built something that felt like home. That night, after Maya was asleep, Evan and Lena sat on the couch surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. We did it, Lena said. We did. Think we'll survive? I survived a lot worse with you. I think we'll be fine. She leaned against him. I love you, you know. I know. I love you too. They sat in silence for a while. Then Lena said, Do you ever think about how we met? All the time. I was such a nightmare. You were scared. I was cruel. You were human, and you learned. That's what matters. Lena thought about that. I almost ruined your life. But you didn't. You made it better. How can you say that? Because it's true. If we hadn't met, I'd still be working double shifts, barely seeing Maya, convinced I had to do everything alone. You showed me what partnership looks like, what trust looks like. You showed me it's okay to let people in. You showed me what integrity looks like, Lena said quietly. What it means to stand up even when it costs everything. I was so focused on success that I forgot why success was supposed to matter. You reminded me. Evan kissed the top of her head. We're a good team. Yeah, we are. A year passed, then another. Life settled into something resembling routine. Evan thrived in his new role, transforming not just the building where everything started, but establishing safety protocols that spread to other properties. He became someone people called when they needed someone who couldn't be bought or bullied. Lena's consulting work grew into a full business. She hired staff, took on bigger clients, built a reputation for being thorough and uncompromising. Maya grew taller, smarter, more herself. She joined the robotics team at school, made friends, asked hard questions about life and death and why things happened the way they did. They celebrated birthdays, holidays, random Tuesdays that felt special for no particular reason. And through it all, Evan carried Sarah with him, not as a weight, but as a memory. He told Maya stories about her mother, showed her photos, made sure she knew that loving Lena didn't mean forgetting Sarah, because that's the thing about loss. It doesn't disappear. You don't get over it, like people say. You just learn to carry it differently, to make room for grief and joy at the same time, to understand that the heart is bigger than you think, with space for all of it. One evening, Evan found Maya sitting on the fire escape, looking at the stars. Hey, he said, climbing out to join her. What are you doing out here? Thinking. About what? About how much things have changed. Evan sat down next to her. In what way? When Mom died, I thought everything good was over, that it would always be just you and me, and we'd always be sad. I felt that way too. But it's not like that anymore. We're not just sad, we're happy too. And I used to feel guilty about that, like being happy meant I was forgetting Mom. You could never forget her. I know, but I worried. Maya looked at him. Do you think she'd be okay with how things turned out? With Lena and the new apartment and everything being different? Evan thought about Sarah, about the last conversation they'd had when she'd made him promise to keep living after she was gone. I think she'd be proud of us, Evan said. I think she'd want us to be happy. And I think she'd love Lena because Lena loves you. Yeah? Yeah. Maya leaned against him. I miss her. Me too. But I'm glad we have Lena now. Me too, kiddo. Me too. They sat there watching the stars, father and daughter, carrying their losses and their joys together, and Evan realized something. This was the point. This was what all the fighting, all the refusing to give up, all the impossible choices had been for. Not to erase the pain, not to pretend the hard parts didn't happen, but to build something good on the other side of it, to show Maya that life could be brutal and unfair and still worth living, that you could lose everything and still find reasons to keep going. That love wasn't a limited resource that ran out when someone died. It grew. It changed. It made room for new people while honoring the ones who were gone. Later that night, after Maya was asleep, Evan found Lena in the kitchen making tea. "Hey," she said, "want some?" "Sure." She poured him a cup and they sat at the small kitchen table, the apartment quiet around them. "Maya and I talked tonight," Evan said, "about Sarah, about you, about how much things have changed." "How'd that go?" "Better than I expected. She's processing everything, figuring out what it means to have you in her life without feeling like she's betraying her mom." Lena nodded. "That makes sense. I told her that Sarah would have liked you, and I meant it. Thank you for saying that. It's true. You're both stubborn, brilliant, way smarter than me." Evan smiled. "You would have driven each other crazy in the best way." Lena laughed softly. "I wish I could have known her." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Lena said, "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "When I first met you, I thought I had everything figured out. I thought success meant climbing ladders and impressing bosses and never showing weakness. And then you showed me that real strength looks like showing up even when it's hard, like admitting when you're wrong, like choosing integrity over convenience. You taught me things too." "Like what?" "Like it's okay to ask for help, to let people see you struggle, to trust that you don't have to do everything alone." Lena reached across the table and took his hand. "We saved each other, didn't we?" "Yeah, I think we did. And that was the truth of it. Not some fairy tale where everything worked out perfectly. Not some story where love fixed everything and made the hard parts disappear. But a real story. About real people who met in the worst circumstances and somehow found their way to something better. About a man who'd lost everything and learned to build again. About a woman who'd sacrificed integrity for ambition and found her way back to what mattered. About a little girl who learned that families could grow in unexpected ways. About choosing to show up, to stand firm, to believe that doing the right thing meant something even when it cost everything. Because here's what Evan had learned through all of it. Life doesn't owe you fairness. It doesn't promise happy endings or guarantee that good people win. It's hard and messy and sometimes cruel in ways that take your breath away. But it's also full of moments that matter. Small choices that add up to something bigger. People who show up when you need them. Second chances you didn't know you deserved. And if you're lucky, really, truly lucky, you find someone who sees you at your worst and chooses to stay anyway. Someone who makes you want to be better without demanding you be perfect. Someone who understands that healing isn't linear and love isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Evan had been that lucky, twice, and he wasn't going to waste it. He stood up, pulling Lena with him, and wrapped her in a hug that said everything words couldn't. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for showing me what that looks like." They stood in their small kitchen, holding each other, building a future on the foundation of everything they'd survived. And outside, the city kept moving. People kept living. Systems kept running. The world kept turning. But inside that apartment, in that moment, three people who'd found their way to each other despite everything were finally truly home. Not because life had become easy. It hadn't. There would be more challenges, more hard days, more moments when the past felt heavy and the future felt uncertain. But they'd face it together, and that made all the difference.